Hello and welcome to this episode of My Fellow CRE Influencers. I am 1031 Broker James, and with me today is one of my fellow influencers, none other than the canvassing queen, Beth Azor. Beth, welcome to the show, and thanks for being with me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me, James.
Awesome. How's your week been so far?
It's been great. Left the ICSC Shopping Center Conference in Orlando, very busy, trying to get some deals done. And now I'm up visiting my son in Pinehurst, North Carolina.
Nice. Awesome. So let's just basically start with, tell us about your start in commercial real estate.
So since I was 18, which was many, many decades ago, I've had my real estate license because my parents were in they were realtors. Okay. So during college in the summers, I would sit open houses and help them out. And when I graduated from Florida State, I got a job as a special events coordinator at not-for-profit because my goal in life was to run the Olympics one day. I like doing special events and I like doing logistics. But I made a whopping $11,000 a year at that job. So I did real estate on the weekends. And after 2 years of working 7 days straight, I decided to do the real estate thing full time and just volunteer for the not-for-profit. And I hated doing residential full time. So someone that I knew said, you should get into commercial real estate. And I said, gross, isn't that selling land? That's more boring than this. And she said, no, there's this thing called leasing where you help developers that are building shopping centers bring in small local mom and pop businesses to fill in the vacancies around the supermarket. And you help these entrepreneurs fulfill their American dream. And I said, that sounds great. I want to do that. How do I do that? And she said, well, there's a company in Miami called Terra Nova, and they have a training program, which is really unheard of in the 1980s that a commercial real estate firm would have a training program. And I called down there and I said, do you have a training program for leasing agents? And they said, yes. And I said, who's in charge of that? And they said, a woman by the name of Donna Abood. And I said, Donna Abood from Florida State? And they said, yeah. Well, James, she was one of my sorority sisters at Florida State. So she picked up the phone and she said, Beth? And I said, yeah. And she goes, you're hired. Just come meet the boss. Nice. And I went in. At the time, we had 11 people. I was there 18 years. I was the president the last 6 years I was there. And when I left, we had about 150 people. So That's how I got into commercial real estate.
So what year did you join them?
1986.
1986. Wow. So you started your career, you had about a 14-year head start on me. I didn't start mine until 2000, but mine was a second career. So I asked this of Bob. I had BK on the show and I had Alan Buchanan on the show. And I asked him, what's one of the things that you miss from the old days of our practice compared to all the tools and everything we have today?
I don't think I miss anything. I go with the flow. So, I know we're going to talk about social media in a minute, but I like it. There's nothing I miss. I still canvas, face to face, person to person. So I still do all of the things I did back then. Right. I haven't given any of it up. If it worked for me, I don't miss fax machines, there's nothing I miss.
Awesome. So you touched on a couple things there, though, is that you still do the same things that you did back then. So I know I'm a Massimo coach. That's how you and I met. You spoke, I think, at both of our Massimo Con events. And that's what I coach the guys, these new kids that are always looking for that new silver bullet or secret sauce that's going to get deals done. It's like, you know what? No. Look at the producers, whether they're, been in the business 10 years or 40 years. They're all still doing the same thing. And canvassing, that's how I got my start as an industrial broker. I missed canvassing. Walking the industrial parks, walking in the back door, the roll-up door would be open. And probably better than 70% of the time, I got to shake hands with the owner right then and there. Way better than prospecting on the phone, although I'm still a fan of prospecting on the phone. Just to be clear, because I know I got some of my members watching this and like, wait a minute, coach. So, anyways, social media. So one of the things that I love about having our pioneers on the show is there was no social media when we started our careers, right? So what year did you dive into social media, and what was it that you thought was a good idea? Because back then, nobody did it. I launched my first website in 2002, and all the brokers around me thought I was nuts. So when did you start?
So it was about 8 or 9 years ago. I was not on Facebook. I was not on any social media. So we're talking 2017-ish. I thought Facebook was a stupid waste of time. And I had an intern, and she came in and she said, I think that we could prospect on Facebook, DMing. And I said, that's the most stupidest idea I have ever heard of. And then I heard my teaching voice say those words come out of my mouth. And then I doubled down and I said, I'm so sorry. That wasn't a nice thing to say, but you go ahead, honey, and see if it works. So I doubled down on the meanness, but she did. And we were after this chocolate store that I had literally canvassed probably 10 times, sent emails, sent snail mail. And within 2 weeks, we had a deal by DMing the guy. So on Facebook. So I said, okay, this works. So I got on Facebook, and for the first 2 or 3 years, I just used it for prospecting. And then I realized, back then I probably had 100 videos on YouTube. And I thought, oh, I could, use LinkedIn to get the videos some more views, like, post clips on LinkedIn or post copy on LinkedIn about the posts, the content that I have had on YouTube. So I started doing LinkedIn, and then Instagram DMing, same thing as the Facebook. And then only 3 or 4 years ago, the strip mall guy reached out to me. He actually posted on X. He said, so one day I was driving in the car with my son, and my phone was like beep, 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 beep. I handed it to my son. I said, what's going on? And he said, you're getting a bunch of Twitter followers. And I said, I'm not even on Twitter. He goes, well, you are, because you're getting these are all followers. And I'm like, what? So we get home. I open up the app. I didn't even know how to open up. I really didn't know how to use Twitter at all. And so I looked, and I had like 300 new followers.
Wow.
And I said, what caused this? And my son helped me go back to a post, which was the strip mall guy wrote, we need more Beth Azor on here. And so all these people followed me. I didn't know who he was. So I reached out to him. I said, who are you, and why do we need more Beth Azor on Twitter? And so we had a call, and he said, you're missing it, not being on Twitter. I see what you do on LinkedIn. It would be valuable. And I'm like, I don't need to get on another platform. And he just hounded me until like 4 months later, I met him in New York, and I said, okay, I'll do it. And then in the first 3 months of being on Twitter, I made more money than all of the years combined on all of the other platforms. So he was right. And I'm happy that, and so now I've been on Twitter for the last 4 years, 3 or 4 years.
Awesome. So going back, so you mentioned started using LinkedIn. So what year did you get on LinkedIn?
Probably like 7 years ago.
Wow. So not even, because I meant to look, but I think LinkedIn started about the same time as, well, Facebook, I think was 08 maybe, because I didn't get on Facebook till 09. I too thought it was a waste of time back then. And I didn't even use it for business. I got on it because my family's spread out all over the country. It was a great way to stay in touch with them. LinkedIn, I got on LinkedIn in 2009.
No, I haven't been, it's less than 10 years I've been involved in social.
Okay. So what's the impact been?
Twitter has been the best financial impact. I'm helping a lot. I teach a lot. I put out free content, which is great. I get recognized a lot. I don't, certainly the Facebook and Instagram DMs for retail prospects, I've probably done over 100 deals on the DMing from those platforms. So it's a tool that helps you get to the decision makers. So for filling my portfolio that I own, and I did do a consulting assignment in Cleveland for the owner of the Cleveland Cavaliers. I did 49 leases in an empty mall that he had there. And all of that came from canvassing and DMing on Facebook and Instagram.
Wow.
So love getting prospects and leases from social. And, it's created a brand. So if some of the larger companies want to hire me to go help, do a workshop for their leasing agents, I'm the only person who will take a team out canvassing in the country. So if that's what they want, they know that about me because I post so much about it.
Right. Awesome. So you mentioned that you had a lot of videos on YouTube. So when did you first get on YouTube?
That was probably probably during the financial crisis. So I was having a lot of people call me saying, can I pick your brain and have coffee with you? And after about 20 of those, and I was answering the same questions, like literally verbatim, I'm like, let me start doing some videos that I put, because I wasn't on social media. I said, let me put them on YouTube and put the titles so that if they need, so that when they call me and they want to pick my brain and have coffee with me, I can just say, I did a video on that on YouTube, and I can just send them. So now I think I have over 800 videos now on YouTube. So when they ask me, it's harder now because there's so many of them, you can't really filter. So I'm working right now with an AI consultant to be able to filter those. So if you want to know, I just bought an empty CVS, how do I fill it? They're going to be able to filter the 900 videos to find out what Beth would say about that.
Nice. Yeah, so just creating some different playlists will be a great way to do that on top of other things. I'm new to YouTube. I just launched this channel in October of 2024. So going back to your videos and all that, and the fact that you're teaching, I noticed on your website that, yeah, you actually teach some master classes, and there's classes that you can register for on your website.
Yeah.
When did that start?
I would say back again during the financial crisis, and then during COVID, I did a bunch more just because I saw that there was a need, and I wanted I wanted people to have access, because, tenants were calling for rent reduction. So I, tried to do a webinar on what you should say when a tenant calls for that. So that it just kind of helped me tell the same message I was telling to multiple people in one place.
Okay. But don't some of your training, isn't it specific for brokers?
Mostly it's for leasing agents, so the big retail shop owners like Kimco, Brixmor, Phillips Edison, they hire me to come in and teach their leasing team. Nice. So those are really for any paid workshops, things that I charge for, it's those companies who pay me to do it. Brokers, I just tell the brokers because they're 1099s, and I been there, done that. Like, I just go watch the free videos. You don't have to pay me. Just go watch the videos.
Right. Exactly. So going back to the original thing we talked about with you canvassing. So can you imagine, because I know you still to this day canvass, could you imagine when you were canvassing back then, how much easier and maybe how much more engagement would have happened had social media been in place back then, where people, as soon as you left, they could have gone online and said, who is this Beth Azor anyways? And then been able to vet you.
Sure.
Would have made it.
I don't know. So in my business, the retailers are so busy, the nail salon owners, the coffee shop owners, versus maybe someone that owns a distribution facility, or certainly maybe an accounting firm or a law firm looking for a tenant rep broker in office. My peeps they're busy running their businesses. So, I'll drop off a flyer and say, hey, I have a new public shopping center that I'm building that's opening next year. Like, they're interested, but they go back to doing their jobs. I don't, maybe later on when they get home at night, they go, is this person for real? I will tell you that today, when you DM someone, and I tell folks all the time that ask me the questions at conferences, is you definitely need to have a platform that shows what you do for a living. So you can have personal and professional things on your Instagram or Facebook page, but you definitely need to have some business things, because if I'm DMing someone and I'm saying, hey, wing joint, I have a second gen restaurant space. Would you be interested in opening a second or third location? They definitely go to my Instagram page and see, who is this person, or is this spam? And on my Instagram page, I have, I own a portfolio of shopping centers worth $70 million, and I have pictures of me standing in front of shopping centers. So that does legitimize me, like that. I'm just, who is this person saying, do you want to open more locations in South Florida? Oh, this girl owns properties. Yes, let me talk to her. So for sure, because we have so many online scams these days, they're reluctant to have a conversation with someone that they don't know.
That's exactly right. Yes. So let's talk about your portfolio. So going back, you joined the firm where you spent 16 years. You were retail leasing agent. At what point in your career did you decide, I want to own a shopping center one day?
So my boss kept coming to me asking me if I wanted to LP in a deal, be a limited partner, and I kept telling him no. I said, I don't have any money. And the third time he asked, he's like, you're an idiot. You're making over $100,000 a year. You need to be investing. And he co-signed a $50,000 note for me and my husband to sign to invest as an LP in a shopping center that I was going to be the leasing agent at, which was crazy and unheard of, and how amazing. And then, but on the one condition that from that point on, every commission, I'd put 10% or 20% aside for an investment kitty. And so, or he was going to call the loan. So of course I did that, and we were able to refi that property. 6 months later, I was able to pay the bank off, and we sold that deal in the late 90s, and I had made over 7 figures on a $50,000 investment. So that was borrowed, right? So I had LP'd with him 7 more times with my boss at the company that I was at for 18 years. And then I went out on my own and I started GPing myself with the goal to do 1 deal every 2 years. And I think at one point, the most I had was 10 deals under my belt. Now, currently I have 4. I think we're going to talk about 1031s. I've sold 3 in the last 18 months because 1031 buyers came to me and offered me a number that I didn't think was possible.
Right.
So I love 1031 buyers. I was never going to sell those 3 deals, but what do they say? Buy low, sell high. So
yeah, I talk to owners all the time. Somebody made me an offer I can't refuse. So, which is one of my favorite quotes of all time. Going back to, your boss and giving you that opportunity. Holy moly. Could you that is totally unheard of. Like you said, I had a similar situation with my broker in Phoenix where I started my career is that I had buying power. So he always said, look, you go find a deal, you get to run the deal. It'll be your listing, you do the leasing, etc. But he also said, after I had brought them a couple deals, he's like, if you want to put your commission in this deal, you can. And be obviously a fractional owner. And so I did that. And while I have yet to own a property on my own, I have done several fractional deals and GP deals. And it's an easy way to get started, especially if you have somebody co-signing the loan for you. Holy smokes. That is awesome. What a great story. So now, social media, you're traveling the world, you're on stage all over the place and you also do something that I just am really impressed with, is your women's summit that you do. Tell us about that.
So during COVID, I learned that of all of the investors in commercial real estate, only 3% were women. And of that, half were inherited or signing on their husband's guarantees on deals. So really, I was part of 1.5%, which I thought was deplorable. So I started asking my girlfriends who are in the industry, like they rep Costco, they rep Home Depot, they rep TJ Maxx. I'm like, do you guys invest? No. Oh, they go, yes, we invest. I go, what do you invest in? The stock market.
Right.
Okay, but you work in commercial real estate every day. Like this is free legal insider trading. No, it's we don't do it. Why don't you do it? It takes $1 million. I go, it doesn't take $1 million. So I just started asking every woman I know, and I kept hearing all of these reasons why they didn't, that I kept debunking. Like it doesn't take $1 million. Well, the math is too hard. Okay, it's not too hard. It's too complicated. It's too risky. When they would say it's too risky, I go, well, my Netflix stock just dropped 80%. The stock market's risky too. So, and then they would say, well, I don't know any other women doing it but you. I'm like, well, yes, because there's only 1.5% of us. So I said, that's a problem I can solve. So during COVID, I did a virtual summit where we had 100 women that attended, and I interviewed 8 women that invested in self-storage, retail, hospitality. I had a lender, and it went really well. We went into breakout rooms. It was great. And so 4 years since then, I've done a live, in-person conference. We cap out at about 250 women, and it's the same structure where I interview women that have invested in all different asset classes. And then we have breakout rooms where if you're interested in self-storage or multifamily or limited stay hotels, you go into the breakout rooms where the speakers that I've interviewed on stage will then show you how to underwrite a deal, show you how they financed the deal, how they raised family and friends money. And then the afternoon of the second day, we do a bus tour around my assets where I hand them, like the A to Z on how I found the deal, finance the deal, operate the deal, etc. So last year at the beginning of the conference, I asked everyone to stand who had not invested the year before, but had invested since, and about 30 women stood up. And then I asked them to stand up if they're investing with other women in the room, and over 40 women stood up. They're investing with each other in the room. So
fantastic.
Very, very happy that we're taking baby steps on this. And then when I realized that the conference will only have 250 because the intimacy allows for that trust and that investment to go back and forth. Sure. I do a Wednesday night podcast called Women Investor Wednesdays, and last night was my 95th interview. And we have about 300 people watch it live, which is amazing. And then a lot of, re-recordings. So that's a way for me to get it out to a bigger audience, to get more women to know that there are a lot of women doing it. We just have to get the word out.
That is amazing. You are
single-handed. And then last year was the first year we made a profit. We made $39,000. And I announced that last year and going forward that every dollar that is a profit from the conference, I'm going to invest as a seed LP in a woman's deal.
How are you going to pick the deal?
Like, I wish I could do a Shark Tank at the conference, but I can't because SEC doesn't let me do that. But women send me their decks, and I look at the decks and I decide, where I'm. Last year I've invested $150,000 into women's deals, so way more than the conference profits.
Yes, awesome. So you're single-handedly having impact on the percentage of women now involved in real estate. You've probably single-handedly doubled or tripled that.
Well, my original goal, I said when I started, I was 60, and I said by the time I turn 70, I'm going to get that 3% to 10%. But last year, the theme of the conference was think bigger. So I announced that I want to take it to 30%. So I've got to double down on that. I have to get this word out a lot more.
Yeah. Well,
so thank you for letting me share it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you got me. We'll have some clips here that we'll both use.
Actually,
out there.
Someone from the Massimo group just emailed me. I won't out his name, but he said he had just heard a podcast about this. And he said, I want to invest in some of those women's deals. Please connect me. And it's a guy. So I was very excited. So I connected him with three women that have deals.
I bet I could guess who that is in less than 3 guesses, but we'll keep that quiet. So the 1031 story. Go ahead. Share the 1031 story.
So I have literally in the last 18 months, had 3 properties that I had no intention of selling, but sold all of them because a broker called and said, would you sell the property? And all 3 times I said, I'm not interested in selling. And all 3 times they said, what if we paid you a price that, what would be the price you'd sell for? And I told all 3 of them, 3 different brokers, the price, and all 3 went under contract. All 3 I did not think would close because they were significantly higher than I thought that they were worth. And all 3 closed, and they were all 1031 buyers that were at the end of their timeline that they needed to identify. I'm very happy with 1031 buyers.
So the question is did you exchange?
No, I pay my taxes.
You paid the taxes. Okay. Interesting. So I really got excited when you were talking about the doubling the, having the impact on the percentage of women in real estate, because I'm on a similar path. Mine is I took on this 1031 exchange education because I learned about 7 years ago that more than 60% of exchanges fail every year. That's a big number. And unfortunately, the class of people that suffers the most from that are our elders, our senior citizens, elders that have owned their passive investment or investment properties for more than a couple decades, and they try to get out of them. And because of all the myths and misinformation out there, that they end up either paying the tax or failing on the exchange for any other number of reasons. So I set out to, by 2030, to cut that failure rate in half. And I am the only broker in the country that does the content that I do. You can find all kinds of 1031 content, especially on the QI sites, but no content out there is from the commercial broker's point of view, where I talk about strategies and how you can better help your clients, because, as you know, wealth is accumulation, right? So just because you sell a property doesn't mean that you can't stay in real estate, even though you don't want to manage it anymore. There are a number of options to where you can preserve the wealth by deferring those taxes that you just paid and putting them to work somewhere else, and still being able to stay within real estate, but yet it be even more passive than you may have had before, and provide in more than 95% of the time, I increase my clients' cash flow with their exchange.
Awesome.
So
that's amazing.
That's what I'm up to. So as I told you, everybody on the show gets to share my tagline, which is the best 1031 is a successful 1031. And you just had 3 of them. So congratulations on that. So I got to hear it from Beth Azor, the canvassing queen.
The best 1031 is a successful 1031.
We got to do it again.
All right. The best 1031 is a successful 1031.
There you go. Awesome. Beth, thank you so much. I am so impressed. I learned so much about you today. Here, I did some research on, okay, I know a little bit about Beth. We've been in the same room many times. And wow, this whole thing that you're doing with women investing. Woo, awesome.
Thank you, James. Thanks for having me.
Thank you again. Appreciate it.